Good morning, everybody. How are you? And how are you, Mark?
I'm great. I'm very excited about today. Been
Yeah,
looking
there's
forward to
there's
this.
already been quite a bit of laughter, so I think we're going to have a hard time controlling ourselves today. So that's going to be interesting. So yeah, we're back in the back in Facebook Central here in not so sunny Gaithersburg, Maryland, where I have a reliable and consistent internet connection this time. So
Woo!
unlike a location near the White House where who knows what's going on with internet stuff, Secret Service, all of that. So yeah, back out here in the safety of the suburbs, and it's already all of our stats are already looking way better. I'm sure you're glad to hear that.
I'm thrilled. I love it when things don't glitch. I have to admit, that makes me very happy because I usually assume it's my fault and there's nothing I can do about it. So that 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 will be a good thing for today.
Glitching makes me anxious.
Yeah.
And there's other things that make me anxious, such as having Jeff Kyle on as the guest today. That makes me very, very anxious. So we're going to get
Good.
to Jeff here in a few minutes. But yeah, what's going on in the life of the church in the next little while? What's happening?
We are definitely finishing up our current Why Do We Worship As We Do series and prepping for Lent. Lent is around the corner. March 2nd is Ash Wednesday. So go ahead and be making plans. You want to come to the 7 a.m. imposition of ashes service in the chapel, which will be short and to the point. Do you want to come to the 12:15? That'll have a little bit more added to it, a little bit more music, a little bit more involved, but still 30 minutes long or less. Or the 7 p.m. full blown Ash Wednesday with everything in the sanctuary. So planning that. Worship this weekend is always the most important thing we do. And just found out from Jeff before this came on that Dave Fouché is going to be singing in the contemporary service. Very excited about that. Dave's a good guy and is one of our contributing writers on our weekly devotion series that goes out on Wednesdays. So, yay. Hope everybody can join us for worship.
I would love to join you for worship, especially the Ash Wednesday services and such. And Lent, I think, as you're kind of recounting that, makes me think about how really it's probably my favorite season of the Christian calendar. What would Here's a little personal quiz. What's your favorite holy day during the Lenten season and Easter and such, and why?
Without question, Monday, Thursday. I love Monday, Thursday because I think it is the clearest example of what it means to be a Christian today. It's got a little bit of celebration to it. There's the communion experience, and Jesus sits with his disciples. It's got the burden of knowing Easter is coming, but it's not here yet. And between Monday, Thursday, and Easter morning is a good bit of suffering and rejection by friends, and there's burden. And I think that sums up the Christian life better than Easter. I think we talk about being Easter people, but we don't live on Easter morning. That, woo, everything's great. We live on Monday, Thursday, and that's without doubt my favorite.
Uh, I think in that context, Easter comes as the validation for Good Friday or for Monday Thursday, right? It's
Yep.
it's it's really it is the day of celebration, but it's all the stuff that leads up to it as to why that's the celebration,
Mm-hmm.
and I think it's really important to think about those other holy days in the context of Easter. I
Mm-hmm.
May I say what my favorite is?
I think that's the obvious question. What is it?
Because I only ask you because I wanted to say what mine was. That's the only
I
reason I ask. Uh,
didn't see that coming. Okay.
I My favorite is Palm Sunday.
Ah,
Yeah, mine's Palm Sunday, and a lot of that has to do with the fact that that road from that Jesus took on Palm Sunday is still an active road in on the Mount of Olives. It's paved now, but you can be on that road and play out the whole scene in front of you. And you know what I have gleaned from that in my
what's
infinite
that?
wisdom? I think that Palm Sunday, the Palm Sunday story, is a piece of political narrative and mockery, and that there's a Jesus is doing the whole thing with a firm tongue planted in cheek, and that all the people who are throwing the cloaks down are similarly satirizing the royal procession in a and I love that. I love it's a piece of
Mm-hmm.
it's we don't really talk a lot about Jesus's nonviolence strategies. You know that some of these things that he does are actually provocative nonviolent things provoking the empire, and that's one of them for sure. And so I don't know if
I
that's
love
actually
I
true
love
or
that. That's so perfect because the old standby is we find the savior that we're looking for, the one that reflects our own lives so often,
yeah.
and the fact that you find the snarky, uh, satirizing, peaceful protester that is Jesus is so perfect and wonderful. I love
Yeah.
that.
So it's I guess in a way it's akin to that Talladega Nights line about I like my Jesus in a tuxedo T-shirt because it says I'm formal, but I like to party too because I like to party. Maybe never a more
That
true theological statement has ever been said. I don't know, but
I love that little 8 pound 6 ounce baby Jesus. Love that.
right? Yeah. Well, I
Yeah.
like the baby G. I like the infant Jesus. Okay, enough of that. Who's our guest today? That I've had to
Oh,
put on.
someone who
I've
loves.
had to mute his microphone because he keeps kind of making little noises in the background before it's his time to come on. So
He can't stop himself because he's the guitar playing Jesus. That's who he loves. The little folk singer that is Jesus sitting with an acoustic, probably a 12 string because Jesus would do that. This is Jeff Kyle. I am so excited. Jeff Kyle is joining us today. Jeff, guitar would Jesus play if he played the guitar?
Hi, everyone. Hi, I'm trying to center myself backwards. It's really hard. There we go. There I am. I don't know how I got uncentered.
I
I
just
got
love
completely
this.
uncentered
I love
while you
this
were
scene
talking
with
about Talladega Nights.
there are these three
There.
bespeckled bald guys on bald
Yeah.
white guys on
Welcome,
the screen
I was going to
today, and
say,
and that's just
welcome
something
to the
else.
amazing.
Methodist Church.
So I got to reach out. Yeah, I got to reach out and remind everybody that this is a live thing. Hey Judy, hey Ginger, so glad to see you today. And we do aim to please around here, and we're in touch with the popular culture, at least of 15 years ago when Talladega Nights was a real thing. Um, but this is a live thing, so be sure to chime in the chat window and ask questions and stuff.
Hi, Judy.
And I know that you're going to be tempted, especially when Jeff starts talking. You're going to be tempted to turn this off, but nay, don't do it. Don't do it. I'm going to get out of here, Mark, and I'll be listening to
Thank you.
that.
Good.
I'll be
Can't
listening
be
to that.
soon enough.
That secret word that you say that gives me the clue that it's time for me to jump back in. Listeners, viewers, well, we'll get into that later. Here we go.
Yeah. All right. So I want to go back to my question. What guitar would Jesus play, Jeff? If Jesus picked up a
Oh,
guitar, what would
a
he be playing?
a big old black Les Paul.
Ah, nice.
Oh,
Yes.
oh yeah, yeah, like a custom, like the Tuxedo Deluxe. Yeah, yeah.
Jesus would not be a bass
I
player.
uh, I could see Jesus playing bass. Yeah, kind of
Yeah.
unobtrusive.
Yeah.
Just laying the
Yeah.
foundation. Sure, Jesus could be a bass
Well,
player, but then again,
th-
big black Les Paul. I mean, that just says a lot.
it does indeed. That's his Easter morning choice. That's what it
Yeah,
is.
that's electric.
Um,
Yeah.
The reason we have Jeff on, for many reasons, is because this week celebrates the 10th year that Jeff Kyle has been on staff at First United Methodist Church in Oak Ridge. And I do want to celebrate that. And as much as might want to poke fun at him, and God knows there's enough to poke fun at, we celebrate that he's a part of our church family. And actually, he has been a part of our church family for a long, long time. You were part of
Long
this
time.
congregation before you began working here. What's it like to be part of a well-established family in this congregation?
Oh, it's great. There was I had a lot of core knowledge coming in, as far as this congregation. I
Hmm.
often say that sometimes I'm limited because my scope has been so narrow. I'm working in the church that I grew up in and was born into, and so I don't necessarily always have a lot of experience with how other people do things. But yeah, no,
Yeah,
I love being a part of this. Um,
yeah.
it
What's your
was
first
it was
memory of this church?
oh my goodness, first memory.
Yeah.
It was probably sitting in the pew in the nave beside mom and dad and listening to, I won't say which one pray, which preacher pray. And just I sometimes lay down on the pew, lay in mom's lap.
Hmm.
I remember that really well. And
Yeah.
he was one of these people that prayed with the real deep voice.
Yeah.
And there
Yeah.
was these pauses. And you think that's it. That's it. He's going to say amen. Nope, he's still going.
Nope.
Yeah.
Kind of like me, deep voice, long pauses.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
I remember when I first arrived here, we had a homecoming kind of experience where we had somebody speak for each of the decades of the church, and it struck me
Yeah.
how every person that got up and said, "Well, during the '60s, we did this and this and this," and oh, there was a big controversy there, and oh, we did this, and oh my gosh, we all got angry about that. Um, every generation, every decade had controversy. I'm wondering, just having the long history that you have in the church give you kind of a better perspective of when tempers flare and we had argue over decisions.
Yeah. Yeah. We haven't had anything that was real knockdown, drag out since I've been working here. And and yeah, I mean, we've seen it all before. It's like brothers and sisters, that go
Hmm.
at it, and then but they love each other, and in the end, we're going to live with each other regardless, for the most part. Um, so yeah, I, I I guess there's only been a couple that I've been really seriously involved with,
Hmm.
and those were hard. But the rest of them I've been kind of watching from the outside and mediating and saying, hey, each side's got some valid points.
Yeah. What was the biggest controversy this church has had?
Well, for me, it was a welcoming statement,
Yeah,
2010 or so. That
that's
was
what I would have thought. Yeah.
yeah, that was really something. Um,
Yeah.
and we're still together. Some of the folks who oppose it are still around, and time has moved on. And the main thing that I want to say about that today is that for the most part, the folks who were opposing it really hard and left the church now don't have any problems with a statement like that.
Yeah.
12 years later.
Yeah. It's amazing how much the culture has shifted in 12 years.
It
And
has.
and we are one of the few churches that have been able to make a welcoming statement that was as clearly defined and welcoming people of all sex and gender and sexual orientation and race, and all those things. And that's one of the proudest moments. I love,
Uh,
love, love having that
yeah.
as part of our congregation's history.
Yeah. And we're seeing it more in the
Hmm.
church than I think we have in a long time. It's in the bulletins now. It's front and center on the webpage, and for me that's a huge plus. As you said, we're one of the few churches that's been able to do that. At least mainline denomination Methodists for sure.
Yeah. Well, one of the things I think you offer to our staff is a sense of history, a sense of awareness of what has been going on. Scott Gillenwaters and you had the co-chairs of staff historian, and then Scott left us, and now it's fully planted right there with you. Um, a lot of things have changed over the course of your life in this congregation. Um, just curious, what was it like to be a youth during the late '40s when you were here?
Yeah, you're not that much younger than me, Mark. We could bring that all out. It was fantastic. one of my dirty little secrets is I wasn't a big church attender.
Hmm.
I had some other places that I was getting some religious help with, that I did go to, not a church, and but there was a charismatic choir director named Gerald Tichy that took over in the mid '70s, and I liked to sing. There were some cute girls in the choir. There was going to be a trip eventually. He kept talking about doing a trip, and so I got. That's when I started coming a lot. By the way, I married one of the cute girls, so that was really good. Um, but yeah, and that's when I started coming a lot, and that was high school. Um,
Yeah.
Before that, I very much remember the lay leader Betty Strohecker, who taught our confirmation. She was fantastic. Just moved away a few years ago.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was cool. I loved it. Loved Gordon Goodgame, who was pastor during my later high school years, and later and then Ken Carter and Ken Hinderlight. Oh my goodness, I love Ken Hinderlight. Just a
Yeah.
lot of good folks here, and a lot of good associate pastors as well.
Yeah. It struck me when you were saying one of the things that brought you was the music program and the idea of a trip. I know that's what brought Steve really, he was a part of this congregation, but it was the opportunity to play and
Yeah.
sing with the choir. Yeah.
Yeah, Steve took my role when I left. I did 3 years and then spent a year a summer getting married. And when I did that, Steve came in and did the instrumental coordination that I had been doing.
Well, as you look over beyond just the youth program or music, what have been some of the changes you've seen in the congregation that stand out to you? If someone were to come in today and say, wow, t- tell me a little bit about the history of the church, what are the things we want to make sure they know about?
Well, the changes since I've been working have been just the the difficulty of watching. It was like for a while, it seemed like every month one of my former Sunday school teachers either moved away or passed on, and
Hmm.
that was really hard. Um, but I mean, we all get older. The coolest thing we've done, and I love the fact that it's lay driven, was turning fellowship night into community meal. That's just one of the best things we've ever done. And the
Yeah.
foresight of the folks, speaking of controversy, the foresight of building a room where that could happen, when we did it in person, and then having to call that a multi-purpose room instead of a gym. That was the controversy. Can't build a gym in a church in 1966. We can't have a gym. Churches don't have gyms, so they had to call it a multi-purpose room. And it truly has been. And it truly has been. And yeah, turning something that was more focused inward of what can we do for us into what
Hmm.
can we do for people who need to eat and are having trouble finding a solid meal. It's one of the coolest things, and it was very lay led, lay driven.
And it really
Always,
speaks volumes about this congregation that before the pandemic experience, we were having those monthly gatherings and really getting to know the people. It really was becoming friends that came in and their families came and we got to know them. And when the pandemic kicked in and it became a weekly drive through experience, it has been incredibly satisfying to see how this congregation has supported that kind of pure, we
uh,
want to be helpful to the community.
once again, solely lay driven. I know Jenny has supervised, but the idea of we can do this every week and we can do it drive through was a lay member and a couple lay
Hmm.
members who made that happen. And it's, I mean, what is it? It's going to be 2 years really soon that we
Yeah.
have, because it started bam like that. It was the shutdown, and then that next Wednesday there was a drive-through meal, um,
Yep.
because these
And it
folks are still going to be
escalated.
hungry.
It escalated just immediately. Let's do this. Okay. It's
Hmm.
one of those fastest. That's when the church is at its best. It's, I mean, there's some hoops to jump through because you don't want decisions to be made too quickly. But when there's a good idea and everybody sees it, this church has a great ability to say, "Let's do this." Everybody okay? Yes, go and
Yeah,
rally around that.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
and enough folks had experienced the in-person community meal that knew it was important and met some of the folks that were there and loved them and didn't want to abandon them just because we were shut down.
Yeah. One of the things you said that I I know that people know is happening, but they don't think about the implications. Is that generation that you're talking about, that were your Sunday school teachers in high school that are passing away, and we're watching that, and the ramifications of that are serious for this congregation financially, in terms of volunteerism. That generation, let's
Hmm.
be honest, our generation, and I do, Jeff and I are in the same generation, and Steve as well. Our generation does not volunteer, does not put its money where its mouth is nearly as much as the generations before us, where they would step up and do things and be present. Our generation has to be coaxed a lot more to get there,
It's true. It's true.
and
Yeah.
that's a sad reality. So if you're a part of this congregation, let me just encourage you to think about, where do you need to use your gifts if you're not already. This
Hmm.
is the place where it's our ministry together. Um, you obviously have been so very much connected to the contemporary worship experience in this church, and in that leadership. I'm curious, what when did you get introduced to the idea of contemporary worship? When did you first see that on the horizon, and then how does that changed over the years from what you first saw?
Uh, I want to say it was a friend that was choir directing at Concord Methodist asked me to come in and do, and named Alan Laser, asked me to come in and do some singing and some specials there. And that was probably mid 90s. They were the first Methodist church that started a contemporary service that I was aware of in this area for sure. And yeah, so I went and did some of those, and as I did them, it was like then Maryville called, and then Cokesbury called, and I actually went and did Cokesbury full time when it started. I sang the first song at the very first Cokesbury contemporary service.
Ah,
Um,
nice.
and yeah, and then of course First Place that Steve started here, and I was involved in that at the beginning, and then left for Cokesbury, and then came back and actually led it for a while in 2001. So
Hmm.
yeah, so it's just and I mean I'm a guitar playing person who can sing some, and so I and a religious person who won't embarrass people when I get in front as in a religious setting in a worship service, and so I just got a lot of calls and started doing that very regularly. Love it too, still do.
Yeah. Well, you do an excellent job on it. I
Oh,
will
thanks.
celebrate and lift up Steve Martin. You know, Steve was in our annual conference the first to talk about we need to have contemporary worship. And he
Mm.
put out a proposal years before anybody else
Wow,
in this region, and wanted to do one at was it Broad Street? No, Muncie in Johnson
Muncie.
City. And the conference said, we don't think this contemporary stuff's going to last. And literally said, no, I think that's a dumb idea.
I didn't know
Well,
that.
la di da annual conference. How about that? Yeah, Steve. One of his great gifts is being that prophetic, taking the word. I would use apostleship, taking the word in a new direction and in a new environment. So I want to celebrate that. Now that
Yeah,
you are in charge of our contemporary worship, I know a lot of people who have not been in contemporary worship. They have. I mean, there's lots of different styles. It's not like
sure.
you have one. What would be some of the words that you would use to describe what you're hoping our contemporary worship feels like, looks like?
Well, authentic, first of all. We, that that anybody that walks in that room has the ability to get in touch with God during that time, and that's the main thing. That's the whole thing. You experience God's presence and worship God because God's presence is awe-inspiring. If
Mm-hmm.
that happens every Sunday, then that's the goal. At the same time, it's chill. Um, and I think folks come to it because it's chill. You can walk in there with coffee and not feel out of place at all. You can walk in there with the donuts when they come back, and nobody cares. In fact, it's normal. Wear whatever you want. I always try to dress in jeans a lot. Don't want anybody ever coming in there thinking they're underdressed. Used to have a guitar player who wore cargo shorts and a Beatles or a Rush t-shirt every single morning. So it's like no one can be underdressed. You move the chairs around, your kids can get up and dance, you can get up and dance, and it's easy that way. So
Yeah.
I hope that's another thing that people take away from the service.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You need to play
The
that.
other thing, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, you need to play that song "Easy Like Sunday Morning" sometime. That needs to be
Oh
your
yeah.
as they walk in. That'd be a great
Oh
song.
yeah, that's got the best guitar solo ever. That fuzz solo that comes. Um, yeah, and the thing that I think is unique is about this style of worship, whether it's done at a non-denominational church or a mainline church, is that it's very liturgical. I mean,
Yes, it is.
it's incredibly liturgical. So we have not abandoned the liturgy or the lectionary in order to have this service. And you know, sometimes we introduce things, sometimes we take them away, we move them around. I hope a little bit more than a traditional service does, but the liturgy
Mhm.
is definitely a part of the service. You won't come in there and not experience that.
You know, I came from the church I came from was very much what I would call the rah-rah version of contemporary worship. It was always about let's recreate a concert feeling of everybody standing and clapping their hands and jumping up and down. Kind of that was not all the time of what it was like, but that's kind of the edge it had. It was so refreshing to come to this service where it is.
Yeah.
There's a sense of awe. There's a sense of quiet. I'm the one that sometimes will go, "That was excellent. Oh my gosh, I like that." And I mean, that's so not my personality. I'm much more the quiet and reflective. But so I'm the disruptor in that sense sometimes. And I just really appreciate the sense of prayerful awe that comes with the service that is being put together there. Nice, very nice.
Thanks. Yeah, that's not me. The worship teams, you know, the five people with microphones walking around doing the cheering thing, this was never me. I never. To me, that style of contemporary worship died out in the 1990s.
Yeah.
It's there's still churches that do it. I mean, we could talk about that too. The amount of contemporary services that have simply become a new kind of traditional service. They're not
Yes.
contemporary, not of this moment. They're of a moment from 15 to 20 years ago, and still stuck there in a different tradition. And that's hard, man. That's a really hard thing for contemporary worship to do, because you get people in that like it, and then to keep it contemporary, you change it, and then are they going to go with you? It's a really hard line to walk in a contemporary service. You
What have
don't
been
want to alienate the folks who like the service, but you also want to keep it contemporary.
exactly and every church I've been a part of that has a contemporary service walks that fine line and wants to change and that temptation to say no, I was comfortable. We've seen some
Yeah,
changes in this contemporary worship that people still talk about
yeah.
that they wish they'd bring back. I think people are no, everything changes, but doing children's time
Hmm.
was a huge shift in this congregation. What are some of the others you remember that was a big shift?
Well, we dropped the name. We dropped the name First Place at one point. We stopped the sharing of. There it is. There it is.
There it is.
That's a
There's the
good looking
logo.
logo,
That's right.
Steve. Uh, the we dropped that. We dropped the sharing of joys and concerns. That was a big one.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then you know the music style changes and it continues to change, and that's always hard. You teach a new song and maybe it's a different style than what folks are used to, and again, it's a line.
Yeah.
It's a line.
I think that the contemporary services that I've watched over the last 5 years have definitely shifted in the style. That there's been, is it Mumford and Son style? Is that how you
Oh
would
yeah,
describe it? That I
sure.
see a lot more Mumford and Son kind of style than I do 1980s pop, or
Yeah,
what someone described to me as every contemporary service in the 1990s and 2000s. It was basically trying to sound like U2,
it still
the
does.
band U2.
It's
It still does.
there. I think there's a whole lot of stuff that comes out that still sounds like it could be on a U2 record. Guitar stuff has gotten slightly less ambient, less delays going on, but yeah, it's still kind of that. For a while, it was very power pop, bands, 1990s. I hate to say boy bands. They weren't. There was like four guys with guitars. Whether it's
Yep.
Fall Out Boy or Simple Plan or Blink 182. There's a lot of that was my stuff right there. I still like that. Um, but
Well, I
yeah, I
don't
mean,
like
and
pop music. Uh, I
there's
don't
some
like pop
churches that
music as a whole, so it's hard
oh
on me. I
oh
like the
mm,
moving away from pop. So
yeah, the Mumford and Son kind of came and went. I'm sure there's some groups that kept because acoustic's simpler in a lot of
hmm
spaces, and in some ways it would be simpler in our space. But there again, do we alienate everyone who really likes the drums and the incredible lead guitarists we have, and
Yep.
go more toward ukuleles and mandolins and banjos? And uh, it's
Yeah.
again, it's a line.
What's the next? Can you see another trend coming? What's next that's going to be popular that you'll be tempted to go toward?
Well, I don't know how tempted I'll be. At some point, they are going to have to start sounding more like songs that are on the radio again,
Hmm.
like the top 20. You just you can't find contemporary worship music being written today that sounds a lot like what's on the radio. At the same time, I mean, you don't need a lot of musicians to do that. It's a backing loop on an iPad or on a MacBook usually, and it's very hard to congregationally sing with it. Um, it does not inspire congregational singing, and
Right.
that's one of the reasons I think a lot of um, churches have kind of stuck to the music and the styles of 10 to 15 years ago. Um,
Yeah.
because if they were really truly being contemporary music, the way that contemporary was originally started, um, you're going to be singing a lot of songs no one can sing along with.
Right. And it's not
Yeah,
intended to be concert and performance. That's one of the trends that I
right,
despise in
right.
contemporary services that it's we're making a concert. You don't have to do anything but stand there and be excited. That drives me
Yeah,
crazy, and I'm so glad we're not that.
yeah,
One of my favorite things to do to talk to people about uh, is the behind the scenes stuff of worship and preaching and stuff like that. I love interviewing preachers. What surprised you most when you moved to working in church worship services that you weren't that you didn't know were it was like that, especially compared to you came out of the school system, right? So
yeah.
what surprised you in that way?
Oh, probably not a whole lot. I mean, because I'd always sung in choirs. I've been in the back, behind the preacher a lot. So and had some very good friends that preached, and so I there wasn't much surprising there. Um,
How
and
noble and holy we all are. Saw
yeah,
all that ahead
yeah,
of time. Yeah.
no, we've been able to get close to. I've been able to get close to a lot of pastors and all great folks, but normal people, not they're not nothing particularly, yeah, that way.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, the biggest thing about moving, and there's a lot about band directing. That's what I did. I was band director for 30 years, primarily middle school, but always high school. The and there's a lot that carries over. I mean, there's a whole lot that carries over in this. The biggest thing that changed that just blew my mind was how much simpler it was to spend your funds. In churches,
Hmm.
it's like you get one signature and done. Yeah, you can have it. One committee says okay. In schools, you would literally have to try to start spending your money as soon as you knew what your budget was, and then hope, especially in Anderson County schools, that you got it spent before it froze. They froze the funds every year,
Wow.
and it was a race to get your money spent before that happened. Here it's simpler.
Which is fascinating for me to hear because this is the most complicated church spend your budget money I've ever been a part of. I've never been a
Uh,
part of a church where you had to get people to sign off on spending your own budget. And
oh
here,
wow.
welcome to, oh yeah, it's your budget, go spend it. But welcome to, my theory is every church bases their personnel policies and their finance policies on whatever the largest corporation is. So in
Hmm.
Chattanooga, it's all TVA driven. It's all TVA policies. In
Uh,
Knoxville, a lot of it's UT system
mhm.
policies. Here, oh my gosh, can you not see the influence of the Department of Energy all over how we do
Yeah.
things? And requisitioning money. You need to
Yeah.
get a couple of signatures, kind of thing.
It's fairly simple as long as you can show folks what you need and why. It's done, and I mean, that was schools. It's a lot harder. It's just a lot harder. There's so many other groups you have to go through, and
Yeah.
and groups that almost never meet. So yeah, yeah.
Well, you most people don't know this, but Jeff has many titles around here. What's your official title? Director of the Contemporary Band? What was it?
Uh, it depends. I thought I was brought in to direct contemporary worship music, and then next thing I know, I'm director of the contemporary worship service. Something I thought I was a lot less qualified. Well, I am a lot less qualified for, although I haven't done it as much. It's done, no longer makes me that uncomfortable. So yeah, I don't know
Yeah.
what my title is. I do know this that when I came in, there was 5 or 6 things I listed I could do. One was work with kids, which I hope to continue to do. And another was I'm pretty good with AV concerns, and particularly audio, the A part of AV. And so about 10 on my job description is I was hired. It was like 10th one down was, you'll coordinate AV around the church. That became, there were many, many, many weeks that is mostly what I do.
Yeah.
And happily so. But yeah.
Well,
So
someone who has an
again,
ear like you have.
my title means nothing. I just I do what needs to be done that week. Uh,
That's true for most church staff. I will say that. Although I think I was the one that contributed to you. I assumed you were the director of the worship, contemporary worship. I think I was the one that came in and said, "Well, what do you want to do, Jeff?" And Jeff was looking at me like, "What do you mean? What I want to do?
I
I
play
lead the
guitar and
band,
sing
man."
songs.
So but Jeff also, for those of you who do not know, carries the title of not only staff historian but staff curmudgeon.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
He goes out of his way to make sure, because it's an effort for him to make curmudgeonly statements on a regular basis.
No, it's
Uh,
not. It's easy.
easy. And he has had the get off my lawn attitude on several different occasions
Who
in
let
terms
all
of
these kids in here?
what in during your long history with the church, what's made it hard to, what are the changes that you went, and your curmudgeonly side came out?
I like change. I don't know. Yeah, I mean, the who let all these kids in here? I mean, I at some point, and I don't. If you're lucky, it'll happen to all of you. You're going to be the oldest person at some point, and it's like, and the kids are great. I mean, Seth O'Kegley Gibson, Emily Dennison, who was one of my favorites. A couple of course, Shelby and Kelsey. Now, they're incredible. Um,
Yeah.
and I got to work with 2 associate pastors very closely who are younger than my own children, Rachel Witt Carciello and Chris Black, and it's like, you think, well, they're 25, what do they know? And they turns out they just, it's wonderful working with them. It helps keep me young. I
Yeah.
don't get to see
We
those
do
middle
have.
school kids every day. So the 20-year-olds are the ones that keep me young, or
Yeah.
the 20
We will.
somethings.
We are blessed. I will speak for both of us. We are really blessed. We have a great staff. And for those of you who don't have not been to a lot of different churches, we have a great staff, and that is a great blessing. We have people who are
Yeah.
trustworthy, some of whom have been in church
It's
a long time, some of whom have not been in church very long, and that's a great blessing because they bring new
it,
perspectives and new challenges. It's great.
it's a real strong staff, and it has been most of the time I've been here. But it just seems like every time we hire somebody, it's getting better and better and better. Um, yeah, Josh, I can't forget Josh as well, how good he is. Um,
Yeah.
and he was slightly older. He'd be ticked if I said it. Oh, there's Kate. Oh, wow. Hi, Kate. I was about to say the 2 people that influenced me the most when I came on board were Troy Forrester and Kate Meacham Nietzsche. I learned so much from both of them. Most of what I know about worship, I learned from Troy, and most of what I learned about working in a church, I learned from Kate. She is a wealth of common sense, and I need a transfusion of common sense on a regular basis. So,
And back when you worked with him, Troy was young,
yeah,
not like
yeah.
now. Now he's
He's the old man now.
And he's the
Yeah, I
old
still
man
talk to
now. That's
him.
exactly.
I was just thinking the other day we hadn't spoken in a month or so, and it's time to call Troy and just talk about basketball, baseball, and Methodism again. Man, I mean, and talk about somebody who knew the church budget inside and out. Man, he was good with that budget. He helped me so much getting started, what I could spend and how I could spend it.
That's excellent.
There was
Thank
a
you,
lot to
Troy.
be done. Yeah, there was a lot to
Yeah,
be done when I came in.
and thank you, Kate. Glad, and I really am
Oh,
glad to see Kate join us too. Now,
oh
one
my
thing I
God.
want to cover before we only have about 20 minutes left before we go much farther. I want to make sure that
I
we
don't have
say
that
very
much
clearly.
knowledge. 20 minutes, I'm
Oh,
done.
you do. You
Everything's
we haven't even
gone.
scratched the surface. Because one of the things that I learned when I first came here, I first met Jeff a long time ago in worship settings and the Oak Ridge setting, but I got to know Jeff really well because he was a delegate to annual conference and an obvious strong ally for the LGBTQ community. Um, which I love, 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 and respect. And he and Nancy, his wife, working with P Flag here in our community and inviting me to speak at P Flag events on occasion, gatherings. Um, we know that the United Methodist Church, if we ever meet again for a general conference, are going to be voting on a resolution to split the church, and it's predominantly over the issues of LGBTQ family and friends, same sex marriage, and ordination. I'm just curious, what are your thoughts on that upcoming split of where the United Methodist Church is?
It should have happened 40 years ago. Uh,
Mm.
a lot of people would be a lot happier. Um, yeah, I mean, I've never been to a general conference, so you often know more about this than me. My thoughts are, yeah, let's get some equality here, some real true equality with folks of differing sexual orientations and gender identities. Yeah, it's beyond frustrating, and as a cisgender he him his old white man, I mean, I've experienced none of what they've experienced, and yet my heart has always been burdened. I'm not sure why. It may have to do with watching kids grow up in my band programs
Hmm.
who clearly um, were were not heterosexual, and watching the abuse they took, often from the church, and or parents who were involved in the church, or other students who thought they were doing what their pastors told them to do. It's heinous, and the fact that, that we are still condoning that through our book of discipline is also heinous. Should have been fixed a long, long, long time ago.
Yeah. So one of the many things I love about you, Jeff, is you have a clear love for all people, and I do mean all people, and you make sure that you say that clearly. And I think Jeff has been one of the leaders in this church and on our staff to help keep us focused in the right direction, and I am deeply grateful for that.
Yeah,
Um,
and
one of our concerns is, when the Methodist Church splits, uh, the conservatives have made very clear this is where it's going to be. We're going to be conservative. We're not going to perform same-sex marriages, and we're not going to ordain gay and lesbian people. The question now becomes the United Methodist Church, which is probably what it will be called, that is remaining once the conservatives leave. Are we going to go back to some wimpy middle of the road? Well, every church can decide for themselves if they're going to discriminate or not. Uh, that is the unacceptable part now, and I think that's what both Jeff and I have talked before about. What we're scared of is if
yeah,
this is going to be the opportunity for us to make a strong statement of don't go back to that centrist, moderate position. Go back and say all people are welcome and all means all.
because there is no centrist moderate position. It does not exist. I'm not sure it exists in any disagreement, but it absolutely doesn't exist here. It is merely a cowardly way of supporting the status quo, of saying, "Oh yeah, I feel for you, but we don't want to make these people mad. We don't want to make those people mad." And the fact that we would even be talking about a system where individual churches and annual conferences could vote on the self-worth of human beings is, I I don't have words for that. That
Oh, I've
we
got lots of
cannot
words,
allow
but
that to happen. Yeah,
I've got lots of words, but I've been told I can't say those anymore on Facebook Lives. I've gotten in trouble for saying words before,
yeah,
but yeah, that's
yeah.
and I'll be honest, I was invited just this last week to. There's a group in our denomination that was taking that centrist position, and I'll be clear. Back when it was there was a group saying let's not split, let's try to figure this out. Surely we can figure it out. That centrist position at least made sense in people saying this is a step. Can we just take a step? Well, that's blown out of the water now. That is no longer an option. We are not going to save the denomination. It is going to split. And as Jeff says, probably should have 40 years ago. Now that this has taken place, now is the time to set aside the centrists and the moderate
Hmm.
positions and say, which side of this are you on? And I was contacted by somebody who said, hey, do you want to be a part of this group? We're talking about this. And it was by text. And I said, I'll be perfectly honest. This is the issue. Have your group made a statement about are you going to try to maintain a centrist position, or are you going to take the progressive
Yeah.
mantle? And the answer was, well, that hadn't been decided yet. And it was like, call me when you decide, because I'm not interested whatsoever in being a part of this you're going to
Uh,
maintain the position.
Thank you, thank you, thank you, Mark. I mean, you've been such a
Drives me
leader
crazy.
in this area, and we are very lucky to have you.
Well, I appreciate all that you have done, you and Nancy as well, in
Oh
this
yeah,
community.
without a doubt, Nancy's been the person who's actually done the boots on the ground work. I just sit and pontificate for the most part.
Well,
And yeah, and if your PFLAG is your thing, or you want to help with Youth Pride, which will be happening in person in May, Ann Backus is your person. She's uh, one of my heroes, for sure.
I didn't check with you, but I have no doubt that it would be safe for me to say if any of you who are watching this are interested in being connected to PFLAG or
Mhm.
Youth Pride, contact Jeff. He'll be the one that can make those connections happen for you. Um,
Absolutely.
and I cannot recommend PFLAG enough. You want to give a brief description for those who hear that acronym? Tell what PFLAG is, what we're talking about.
Parents and Friends of Lesbian and Gays, I think is what it stands for, and it's yeah,
Hmm.
it's an ally group. It's a group of allies for the most part. I mean, there are folks who participate who might be in the LGBTQ group, but there's just a whole lot of folks that are just allies, parents and friends, as it says, and
Yeah.
and yeah, and so through that we'd get involved with the GSA, Gay Straight Alliance, which is now Gay Straight something else Alliance, sorry, Trans
Hmm.
Alliance, Gay Straight
Yeah.
Trans Alliance at local schools, and ran into some great folks there. But the first thing the kids told us was, we're going to do Pride in June. Let's all go to Pride, and they're like, "There's nothing there for us." They do a parade and then they start drinking. So so Ann Backus says, well, why don't we have our own? And so started probably 6, 7, maybe even longer years ago. First Saturday in May usually, had a youth pride event, and we're not aware of anything else like it happening. And it's fantastic. Kids show up there, and whereas they, especially 10 years ago, were had to be inhibited and hidden, and they just come and they're themselves, and they're surrounded by people who love them, and it's one of my favorite things to do, or to
Yeah.
help with, I should say. And Backus does it. Yeah, we had kids coming one year. They were coming from Georgia and Virginia, and it got so big.
Yeah.
It's been held at First Presbyterian. This year, I think it's we learned a lot. Ann has learned a lot. One is you don't start it early in the morning on a Saturday, and the
Ah,
other is you have a lot of just activities and social time for the kids. I think it's going to be all outdoors this year, is what I've seen, uh, because of COVID, and so yeah, I'll be happy to hook anybody up with that wants to be. It's a wonderful thing. Always use
great.
help.
I feel like the United Methodist Church is going. We've been through this dark night of the soul of facing our fears, facing our struggles, and we're going to emerge into this new era where we can actually be ourselves and take up the mantles that we should have been taking up 40 years ago, 50 years ago. And if we ever get to General Conference, it is going to be a new day, and certainly for you, for our congregation at First United Methodist Church.
Yeah.
Jeff, I'm kind of hanging on to a memento here.
Hey,
yeah,
hey,
no,
just know
we
this
have
race swings both ways. I have some mementos of you as well.
if we have this, excuse me, if we continue this discussion, I just remember there was a time I think we met somewhere for a tasty bev, and we had this was early in my tenure at as associate pastor at First Church, but we had a very spirited conversation about the issue at which you were that you guys were talking about just now. And I was still hanging on to that kind of pre-Enlightenment point of view. And I am a good debater. I can push my point and win the conversation. But you know what? It's not that you won it. You changed my mind. Oh. That was a key point in changing my mind. So. Oh. If you ever come away from a conversation with anybody out there, if you come away from a conversation saying, hey, well, hey, the guy's, he's stuck, he's not going to move, he's not going to budge. Time is necessary sometimes, but if the Spirit is in the conversation, then it's all gonna pan out in a positive way. So thanks for that, and thanks, so. Jeff, because you are the. I like to recount the story of when I was playing with Todd McCoy, Tim Fisher, and this was in high school. Yeah, and it was a band that we couldn't ever find a name for it, but my brother came up with you should call the band Steve Martin and the Jerks.
Cool. Good folks.
But the phone rang one afternoon, and Todd McCoy said, "Hey man, the youth group is going to Myrtle Beach on a trip, and they need a bass player. Can you come?" And I took the phone and said, "Mom, can I go to the beach with the church for a week?" Yes.
Nice.
And that was. I always say you were the band leader then, and you walked me through this musical that we did, and I recount that I balked at the music as being a bit cheesy in places, but I also will say that that's the first time I heard the gospel. I mean, heard it.
Wow.
So, and just for all of you who think, we need to be involved in, telling the story of Jesus every way we can. Sometimes the way you do that is by inviting a kid to play bass on a trip. The kid isn't interested in learning about Jesus at the time. He just wants to meet girls, play bass, go on a trip. Yep. So thanks for being there, man.
Oh, that's really, really sweet. Thanks. I will, since we're doing this, I will say when I had my 20 something crisis of faith, you were right there for me. One of the reasons I'm still a Christian.
Don't know how that happened, but hey.
Love that. Yeah.
We give Jesus the glory for that.
Okay.
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you,
Let's
Jesus.
Do that. Let's do that. Can't be either of us.
Seriously.
I know us too well.
Seriously. All right. Well,
I will say that since the two of you grew up in this church, in and out of this congregation, I have the honor of not having grown up in this church and be able to come in and see how great the ministry here has been for a long, long time. And I would dare say you two represent so much of what this church has gotten right over the years. And it's an honor to be part now as one of the pastors on staff to be part of a long heritage of pastors that have been really, really outstanding in this annual conference. This is one of those churches that you long to be at because of that pastoral history. And I heard Jeff mention Gordon Goodgame and Ken Hinderlight. Steve, who were the ones that pastors in this congregation that were the ones that went, they're so good?
Well, Gordon and Ken. I mean, it was, Ken Carter was there at the at a critical point for me. I mean, that's the kind of the funky thing. I may have been part of this church for forever, but as someone who pursued ordination and becoming an elder and part of the itinerant system, it really only got me for just a few years in those formative years. So Ken Carter was the pastor that I was when I was in seminary. Helped me, choose the seminary I went to, go Candler, and really I think deep down knew that I needed something other than what I had leading to that point. So in other words, he pointed me towards a seminary that would really challenge my faith and teach me something much bigger and broader than what I had going in. And so, it's hands down, it's Ken Carter. And I just remember there were several people at that time in our conference that I just still look at as being truly great people. And I don't know that, I guess I look, I don't know. I'm going to say too much here. So they're truly great people, and they were certainly great in my life. So, yeah.
Excellent. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
Well, I know our time is rounding out here. I want to thank everyone who joined us online and all the comments. More comments are coming in and now, and I think we're building that sense of this Facebook Live experience, and we appreciate that. And sorry we can't get to all of them. And you're right, 3 bald men, so representative of the United Methodist Church.
3 bespectacled bald men.
Yeah.
Cisgender that we are. So
Cisgender white.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So, Steve, what's on tap for next week? Steve?
I don't know. I don't know what we have on tap for next week. Do you know what we have on tap for next week?
Well, I'm hoping we're going to get Lori Joe back. We've been trying. The ever elusive former associate pastor, Lori Joe, is now a district superintendent. Her star has risen in the East, and she is in the high and lofty position of district superintendent. I'd love to have her back. So if anybody knows
she wants
Lori Joe,
to do it. We just have
her.
some connectivity issues to deal with, and once we get that sorted out, we're going to do it. How about Troy?
Troy,
you had a discussion with Troy, another bald guy, but bald
Troy.
white guy, but I think that'd be fun.
Wait till March Madness and get Troy.
Okay.
For Duke basketball.
Okay.
I heard somewhere that he's a Duke fan.
Luann cracks me up.
Oh, he
here.
said. Yeah.
I think she's right.
Troy would be good. And get Kate too.
Would love for Kate. Yes, would love for Kate.
Yeah, once again, like the person with probably the most common sense per ounce ever. Love her. She taught me so much about church work. So quick.
So I would ask everybody to vote, but I don't think that's necessary because I think we're going to, at some point, we're going to at least ask everybody to be on, right? All of those folks. And
Tim Reynolds, Steve?
I do,
Tim?
yeah.
He'd be good. He's a good pastor. He'd be good. You got to forget your history, same as with me. But Tim's a good guy. Become one of my best friends.
He played. Did he play drums with us? What was his instrument?
Tim Reynolds, keyboard, bass, singer, primarily a singer.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, he's a pastor at Second Pres in Knoxville.
It's funny how all of us rebel musician types have all wound up in churches at some point. I don't know.
His story is one of the best too. He was leading a contemporary service and led a couple, and he kept looking at the pastor. He's going, I could do a lot better than them. So he became a pastor.
And hallelujah for that.
Yeah,
that's great.
Yeah.
The way it works, let me tell you, we try to keep a low bar so people feel called into ministry over us. So.
He's an old white man, but he's got a good full head of hair. So,
well, we don't want
he won't fit here. All right. Well, another good one, I think, Mark, and we'll have something to say about things going forth. I know this creates more work for me, but I'm thinking about it'd be kind of fun to start pulling some clips out of these things and posting them on social media so people know about it a little bit more. I mean, we are so brilliant and so faithful that I can't imagine, putting this light under a bushel. It's just, it really,
Well,
Yeah. Yeah. Just
yeah,
start next week after this one.
I don't know. I don't know.
Thank you, Ginger.
Yeah. All right. It's 12:01, so I think we're done. So thanks everybody
we
for
are done.
coming, and thank you, Jeff. This has been great.
Thank you.
And
Thank you. Appreciate you having me.
yeah, and we'll see you next week.
All right.
Bye.